Part 66. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 653. Qi Ziyuan returned to the harem angrily, and ordered the imperial chef to use the tributes from Jian Nanjun to cook all the dishes that night, and all other dishes were not used. The treasury was empty and there was no money to waste. It was almost after Qi Ziyuan finished his dinner that what he said was spread outside. This time not only the courtiers who were officials in the court heard about it, but even the common people heard about it. The second news is that the emperor praised Qianan's Yuganko for clearing the liver and suppressing qi. It is a good tea for clearing away heat and detoxifying. The officials understood what the emperor meant. The emperor is raising food for Qianan. Some courtiers felt disdainful, feeling that the emperor had placed his status too low and lost the dignity of the royal family, but more ministers were moved to tears and said, "It is really my luck to have this benevolent king, and the good fortune of you all. The good fortune of the people of the world." All the ministers responded one after another and rushed to tell each other. They were not disgusted with the fact that Rongjun Wangfu yelled in the street. Instead, they asked the servants in the family to buy some Qianan local specialties, and specifically asked for more money. The courtiers of the former court didn't do anything. It wasn't that they didn't want to do nothing, who didn't become an official with lofty arrogance, and wanted to make a performance that would be famous in history. But the atmosphere of the whole Great Zhou was like this. Emperor Jinjian didn't like government affairs, Qin Xiang controlled the government and did nothing, and those who took bribes were more valued than those who were clean and honest. Over time, everyone became lazy. Now, although it is difficult for them to change their bad habits for a while, the exhausted pride in their hearts has revived again. Isn't it a blessing for them to meet Qi Ziyuan, a monarch who has a heart for the people and is willing to use his talents? Qi Ziyuan didn't know that his act of anger unexpectedly won the loyalty of most of the courtiers. The focus of the common people is different from that of the officials. They only think that the emperor is so poor. When shopping, I have to inquire with the servants of Rongjun Prince's mansion. Zhu Liang is clever. Thinking that the fourth master often shows the emperor's benevolence in front of people in Qianan, he recruited a few clever servants to the side for simple training. A moment, so someone asked again, and the servants answered like this. Our uncle, that is, the emperor, was also rich in wealth back then. Not to mention, the amount of gold, silver, and jewels he paid just because of so many bills with the gold man is unknown. Although our prince is worse than the emperor, the money is not worth it. Not to mention there is a cousin of Anqiagong who can do business. Then why is the emperor so poor that he eats these things? The common people didn't believe it. The servant sighed and said, our two masters of the Qi family are rich, but they couldn't hold back Dezhou and emptied the national treasury. Then Prime Minister Qin didn't leave a single copper coin to the country. Don't you need money for food relief? Not for resettling refugees. Money. Aside from anything else, the court always needs to distribute grain seeds and support farm tools in the spring, right? All of this requires money. Where does the money come from? The emperor and our lord sold everything that could be sold from the very beginning. Mr. Anqiagong millions of family property was donated to Daqi. My dear. In order to appease the hearts of the people, the emperor only knows about these things, and I only heard about them occasionally when our prince and Anqiagong talked. You are not allowed to spread it. The emperor loves the people and is unwilling to waste money. Otherwise, you see, what do you want to be the emperor? Isn't it the beauty Jian Quan? But our emperor has been on the throne for half a year, and there is still only one empress in the harem. Why? Isn't it because it costs money to fill the harem? I heard that now the emperor uses all the things that were in the hidden mansion before, and nothing has been added. The common people love to listen to gossip, especially the gossip of the royal family, and they gathered together one after another. The voices of the lower people are kept very low, and only the few people in front of them can hear them. He said, Do you think that our palace sells Canaan local products here to make money for ourselves? This is because the emperor is worried about the people's livelihood in Canaan, and he can't bear the hardship of the people. The treasury can't pay a cent of silver, so we can only let our palace find a way out for the people in Canaan, but there are many miasma and poisonous insects in Canaan. The emperor knows that the big guys are not at ease with these things, so he kept a copy for himself, used it first, and then sold it to you. The people burst into tears when they heard this. Your Majesty's benevolence, knelt down on the ground in a huff, and the people behind didn't know why, but when they saw the people in front kneeling, they also knelt down one after another. Zhu Liang rushed over, and slapped the boy on the head, wishing to stare him out of a hole. Seeing this, an old man stood up tremblingly, held Zhu Liang's hand, and cried, "Housekeeper, you can't blame him. The emperor should tell us the hardships he endured for the people. Why should we keep it a secret? This thing is good, you don't need the emperor to try it out one by one. Come, I'll buy it, 10 copies of each item. I want 10 copies of each. I want 20 copies. The people behind also got up one after another, and squeezed forward with the money. Zhu Liang squeezed out a smile, and said, "Everyone, slow down, I will ask someone to clean up for you," he said while pulling the servant back. The old man said worriedly, "You can't embarrass that little brother, he is also kind, and he told us because he couldn't bear to see us confused." Zhu Liang pulled him back with a hasty smile, patted him on the head and said, "Who told you to talk nonsense? I taught you 3 sentences in total, and you told me a lot. Thankfully you didn't mess things up. If you mess things up, 10 of your heads won't be enough to cut off." The servant shrank his neck and said, "Housekeeper, I know I was wrong, but just say 3 words according to your words, the people in front will never let me go. You just need to keep silent and smile slightly. Can they still force you? Go down and don't say a word." Zhu Liang knew very well that the essence of hiding a half sentence in a sentence is what people imagine. Originally, he only ordered his servants to pass on 3 sentences. Who knew that this kid didn't watch and said a lot of words? He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Just hope things are still under control, he is really just cheering up the royal family. Unexpectedly, what the servant said only lasted one night, and the next day it spread throughout the streets and alleys. Everyone knew how miserable the emperor was. The souvenir was sold to raise food for the people in Canaan. The emperors of the great Zhou dynasty have been absurd for several generations, especially Emperor Jinjian, who lived in Linen City for more than 20 years, has been absurd for more than 20 years. This is the first time for everyone to see such a difficult and reliable emperor, and they are all very moved. People who didn't want to buy Canaan local specialties also flocked to the streets to buy some, as a reward for the amiable and lovely emperor. On the 3rd day, the more than 20 carts of souvenirs escorted by Zhu Liang were sold out, and the people who came from the neighboring prefectures and counties beat their feet and chests in the street without buying any, and wailed that they were late. Zhu Liang's heart ached when he saw it. If he knew they would have bought more, so many people bought them, how much less money would they make? His distress was unbearable. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 654. The people who came here did not buy the cured pork and pickled vegetables that the emperor had eaten, but they brought back a royal legend. So after the people deliberately spread it, the story of the emperor eating bran-swallowed vegetables for the people spread all over the south of the Yangtze River, and then went to the north, the central, western and southern spread past. Qi Ziyuan had unknowingly gained the loyalty of a large number of subjects. Only half a year after the founding of the country, the common people gradually had a sense of belonging to Qi. By the time the emperor knew about it, the news had spread to Canaan, and the people of Canaan gathered together on purpose. Bless the capital and thank the emperor for his love for them. Lu Qing deliberately reported this matter to the emperor. Qi Ziyuan sighed slightly when he got the booklet, and passed a good year in a happy mood. Naturally this will happen in about a month. At this time, Zhu Liang was happily supervising the accountant to seal all the money he earned into the treasury, and then the big lock was released, and a servant came to announce him into the palace. Zhu Liang didn't dare to neglect, and hurried into the palace. Because Zhu Liang was a domestic servant, Qi Ziyuan met him directly in the harem and asked, "Are all the goods you brought sold out?" Going back to the emperor, "Yes, they are all sold out before noon today." Qi Ziyuan nodded slightly. "How much did you earn?" Zhu Liang hurriedly sent the account book that he had recorded today. Qi Ziyuan directly turned to the last page, raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why are there so many?" "The emperor's grace is mighty, all thanks to the emperor's blessing." Qi Ziyuan shook his head and smiled, and asked, "Do you want to buy food and go back immediately?" "Yes, before coming here, the concubine specifically told me to leave as soon as possible, and it is best to return to Qianan at the beginning of spring. The villagers are all waiting." Qi Ziyuan nodded slightly. "Then you go down and prepare. When you are about to leave, send someone into the palace to say that I have something for you to bring to the prince and concubine." "Yes." Zhu Liang bowed and stepped back. Because the grain is purchased directly from the Fengshao grain store headquarters, the action is very fast. He can calculate the money here, and he can immediately take out the grain and load it into the car. In just 2 days, 23 carts of grain are bagged. Wang Quan said distressedly, "I didn't expect that you could get so much money in exchange for those truckloads of goods," and almost emptied the grain storage. Zhu Liang smiled and said, "Not long after, another batch will be shipped from the Northland. Are you still worried about the supply of grain for this grain store? When the autumn harvest comes, there will be more income from the prince's fiefdom, so you don't have to worry about it." Wang Quan also smiled when he thought of this. Qi Ziyuan asked Li Jinghua to prepare a lot of good things, all of which were for food, and he packed 5 carts before giving up, 2 of which were for Fan Zijian. Nearly half of them, although they felt that he was too kind to Duke Angguo, king of Rong County, did not dare to speak out. Zhu Liang had only been in Beijing for 6 days before heading south again. It was already the 28th day of Chinese New Year, so he could only celebrate the New Year on the road. Because a lot of food was transported, the journey on the road was much slower. It took a full 21 days to reach Zhezhou, and the carriage entered the city when it was surrounded by the people, making enthusiastic noises. Zhu Liang was taken aback, thinking that it was refugees who were robbing food. He hurriedly asked someone to protect the convoy, but saw the common people knelt down in groups, and Xiaoting came quickly, saying, "Mister, let you transport the food directly to the government office, and personally hand it over to Lu Zhifu to take care of it." Lu Qingzhao prepared 2 grain depots, and took Su Zhihu to inspect the grains before putting them into the warehouses. After the handover, Zhu Liang went back to see Mu Yangling with the account book. Mu Yangling looked it over and said to Xiaoting, "Hurry up and go to the Miao village, and inform Chief Jian to come tomorrow to get food for the elders and county officials who took the lead." Yadu sent a letter and asked them to come over, so that the servants who had been trained before are ready, and when they arrive tomorrow, they will start paying the bills. Chief Jian came very quickly, and he arrived outside the mansion almost as soon as the city gate opened. Mu Yangling understood his mood and got up to do things. Not long after dawn, the highly respected leaders who were in charge of the acquisition arrived one after another. In addition to those near Zhezhou city, there were also people from 2 nearby state capitals. Their homes were far away from Zhezhou, and some had to travel for 3 or 4 days. Effort. Because Zhu Liang would write to report his itinerary every 3 days, Mu Yangling sent someone to invite everyone 5 days ago. They had already lived in the inn, but they did not expect that they came later than Chief Jian, and everyone was a little embarrassed. Chief Jian was full of smiles. Just now he had inquired about the situation with the maid in the palace. All their goods had been sold, and there were 20 carts of grain brought back, so he couldn't help being unhappy. Mu Yangling came out of the back hall and said straight to the point, "Please come this time, everyone. The food has been shipped back. Since we promised the folks, it must be fulfilled. Calling everyone today is to distribute the food." Mu Yangling turned to look at Li Shun. Li Shun went out and brought 3 teams of servants over, and stood in the yard, and the people in the room whispered to each other. Mu Yangling looked at them and said, "These are the servants of our palace who can settle accounts. Because the matter of repaying the food is important, it's not that I can't trust you, but it involves people's livelihood. I have to be careful and pay back the same as before." The same as before, each team is composed of the palace, government servants, and sages, and the sages are the main ones, and the food will be returned to the folks who have notes. Mu Yangling got up and saluted the sages who were highly respected in the hall, and said, "You are all people who are respected by the people of the villages, and they are elected by them. This matter has been laborious for everyone. Afterwards, the palace will have a big thank you." Everyone stood up and returned their salutes. "Princess, this is what we should do. It should be us thanking the emperor for his benevolence, and thanking the prince and concubine for their kindness." Yeah, I didn't expect the emperor to sit in the high hall, but he still misses me and the little people in the countryside." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "The whole world is full of princes and ministers, no matter how remote and barren they are also the emperor's subjects. How can the emperor not remember you?" After Mu Yangling finished speaking, he asked people to take the account book and lead everyone to the grain depot to get the corresponding grain. At that time, the officials of the county government will be responsible for escorting it. When the people left, Mu Yangling was free to entertain Chief Jian. Because the Miao village could get the most food, he didn't have to queue up with everyone, but divided it directly from Mu Yangling. All the Miao people took notes in exchange for grain, and no one took the money, so the grain involved was the most. After some calculations, 11 carts of grain were taken away at once. Chief Jian checked and saw that the quality of the coarse grains on the car passed the standard. He laughed so hard that he couldn't see his teeth. Chen Jiake didn't expect it to be so smooth. Those homely things that are available in every family in Miao village can really be exchanged for so much food. Chief Jian asked his son-in-law to escort the food back first and distribute it to the Miao people, while he stayed behind. He looked at the Han people's convoy with a smile and found that they didn't move much. He became pensive and turned to look for Mu Yangling. "Princess Wangfei, why do you Han people take so little?" Mu Yangling smiled and said, "When receiving the goods, many people chose to ask for copper plates, and there were not many people who changed notes." Chief Jian's eyes lit up. "The remaining food." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 655. Mu Yangling smiled and said, "Naturally, it was allocated according to the original agreement." Chief Jian was embarrassed, and the 11 carts of grain he had just transported away was the reward he deserved, and the rest naturally belonged to Mu Yangling. He also roughly estimated that after changing all the notes, he would probably still have a car and a half of grain left. Very satisfied, Chief Jian looked at the account book in Mu Yangling's hand, and thought about how to talk to her to ask for some more. He was willing to exchange things or buy with money. After all, the price of food is not high. However, Mu Yangling was unwilling to change it to Chief Jian, but planned to leave it to Lu Qing, and then use it as relief food when it was too late. The Miao people are all exchange notes, and every household has benefited from this trip. It is not difficult to save a little to get through the lean time, but it is different here for the Han people. All eyes in Qianan were fixed on the palace and government office. The next day, grain trucks set off from Jizhu city one after another, and the news spread like wind to all parts of Qianan. When you enter the house, you open the cabinet to find the hidden note. Mother Wei hurriedly followed. What's the matter, Heza? Mother, Wei Heza lowered his voice and said, Li is back with food, and those who have notes can go to exchange for food. Really? Mother Wei's eyes lit up. Wei Heza nodded fiercely, and said, Mother, when my father comes back tonight, we will go together. Hey, Mother Wei grinned happily, and then asked cautiously, can we guys really exchange 223 caddies of coarse grain? Wei Heza was also a little uncertain. It should be true. The palace can't lie to us. I heard that this is what the emperor said. The prince is the emperor's younger brother. He has to listen to the emperor. Oh, we have met a good emperor. Yes, yes, the prince and princess are also good people. In the evening, the Wei family father and son went to Lichhen's house together. When Lichhen returned home, he saw the two of them and waved, come again tomorrow, the car hasn't been unloaded yet, so you won't be able to get it if you come. Father Wei smiled embarrassedly, and Wei Heza couldn't help asking, sixth uncle, can we really get 223 caddies of grain? Li Zhen nodded slightly and said, it's just coarse grains. Wei Heza grinned, and said, rough grains are good, I like to eat coarse grains, he he he. Seeing his smirk, Li Zhen couldn't help being amused, and waved them away. The next day, Li Zhen set up a table at the entrance of the village, with several bags of grain piled behind it, and people from several nearby villages surrounded him, and Li Zhen said, those who have notes, bring them up to exchange, and those who don't have notes, back 3 step. Because Wei Heza was in the village, he came early to line up and was the first one to rush up. Li Zheng unfolded the note for the servants from the palace to read, and then sang, Wei Heza, 223 caddies. The people behind quickly poured the grain into the bag he brought, and handed it over to him, and Li Zheng ticked the note and asked Wei Heza to press his fingerprints, and the people in the palace over there recorded the account in the ledger. Come on, this is one complete. Seeing that Wei Heza really got so much food in exchange, the people behind got a little excited, squeezed a little forward, and Li Zheng shouted, come one by one, these grains are all weighed, and you are indispensable. Those with notes all laughed, while those without notes were so jealous that their eyes were red, and they all asked whether the palace would still accept souvenirs, and they wanted to change their notes. Li Zheng glanced at them and said, do you think business is so easy to do? This time, it was a year ago, and the emperor helped, so that those things could not be sold. There is such a good thing, but it is impossible. Didn't the palace say that they want to sell food? When will they sell it? Yes, I heard that the price of food in the palace is not high. Don't think about it, Li Zhen waved his hand and said, just who is so far away from us? By the time you get there, the food will be sold out. I told you at the beginning that we need to change the note, but you didn't listen. Look at the people. The village is full of notes, and no one asks for money. The faces of the villagers were a little gloomy, and Li Zheng sighed, don't be discouraged, the emperor is good, the court will naturally not care about our life or death, but you should also strive to be more courageous, so don't let the emperor feel cold. After Li Zheng said this, everyone cheered up again, and all looked towards the north anxiously, wondering when such a good thing would wait until the next time. Unlike Han villages where joys and sorrows are mixed, Miao villages are as lively as New Year's Eve. Jian moved faster and divided the food into several parts, and his cronies distributed them in person. Private embezzlement, the princess hates this kind of thing the most. If she knows that there is such a dirty thing in our Miao village, we will not have our share in such good things in the future. His confidants were stunned and responded one after another. Even if they went to other Miao villages, they also strongly demanded to exchange them for those Miao people in person instead of handing them over to the chiefs of the Miao villages. They said, this is the business of our chief and the princess, it is a matter of reputation, and we dare not make any mistakes. Even if someone wanted to embezzle food for themselves, they had to restrain their minds when they saw the servants of the palace and government servants who followed. Jilu's family lived far away, and he was the last one when he came over. Seeing that there was only an empty grain bag behind them, he felt cold and stepped forward in a daze. Someone grabbed him and said, "Jilu is here, Jilu is here, why did you come? Away, and the people in the palace are leaving, hurry up and get your food." Jiro came back to his senses in a jerk, ran 2 steps, and asked cautiously with red eyes, "I'm late, is there any food left?" Away looked him up and down, and said, "You are Jilu, right? You are the only one left, so bring me the note." Jilu hurriedly took out the note and gave it to him. Away checked the note, handed it over to the people in the palace for confirmation, and then asked people to drag the food that had been received from the car off the truck, weighed it again in front of Jilu, and then asked he stamped his finger on the note and recorded the account. Away patted him on the shoulder and said, "We need to hurry up next time for food distribution. Fortunately, we stayed for an extra quarter of an hour this time. If we leave, you can't go to our village to ask for it." Jiro breathed a sigh of relief, and said embarrassingly, "My home is a bit far away, and it was too late to come over when I received the news." Jiro exchanged a lot of food. He couldn't take it home by himself, so he stored 1 bag at a relative's house first, and planned to come back tomorrow. He carried the other bag back with the wind blowing under his feet. A voice said angrily, "Jian is too deceitful, isn't it, because he has a better relationship with the palace? He even intervened in our Miao village. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 656. Princess, Mrs. Chen is here. Please. Mu Yangling put down the book in his hand, patted his son's butt, and asked him to play. Mrs. Chen walked in with her head down respectfully, and seeing Mu Yangling was about to kneel down, she hurriedly supported her and said with a smile, "Madam, excuse me." "Thank you, concubine Wang." Mrs. Chen stood up cautiously, and bowed to the side. Mu Yangling smiled and said, "Mrs. Chen, please sit down. You don't have to be so cautious. Speaking of which, I have to thank you for lending us this other courtyard. It's an honor for a woman to be able to serve the prince and concubine." Mrs. Chen was slightly relieved when she saw Mu Yangling was kind. "I lent them a house to live in, but never dared to take the initiative to visit. But it's impossible to say that they don't want to come to the door. It took so much money to let the prince stay at their house. Wasn't it just to talk to King Rong?" So as soon as she heard that the princess was invited, Mrs. Chen packed up and came here, knowing that the princess didn't like trouble, so she came alone, not even bringing her daughter-in-law with her. Mu Yangling met Mrs. Chen because they were going to move out. Their general mansion in Qianan had already been built, and they were going to move out someday. Last night when Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling talked about the Chen family, they said that the Chen family was not bad. "We are knowledgeable and interesting, after all, we are satisfied with living in other people's house for so long, so naturally we have to give something back." Mu Yangling wanted to give money at first, so Qi Heiran laughed and said, "At the beginning, the Chen family did not know how much money they had to fight for this spot, but in the end you paid them rent. If you know it, you are stupid. If you don't know, you think that the master is ignorant, that's all. You can give them a post from our palace tomorrow. You will definitely have a treat when you move to a new house, so send them an invitation post in advance. Just give an invitation in return." After staying for 3 months, Mu Yangling's expression was a little strange. Qi Heiran said proudly, "Do you know how much a piece of master's invitation can be sold outside? It's something that money can't buy." Mu Yangling didn't believe it at first, but as soon as the invitation was handed over to Mrs. Chen today, Mrs. Chen expressed her gratitude that on that day, she and her husband would definitely come to congratulate her. Seeing Mrs. Chen leave with the invitation in gratitude, Mu Yangling sighed, It seems that it is exactly as the prince said, our family's invitation is very valuable, it's a pity, it would be great if we could sell it. Li Chun burst out laughing with a puchi, why do you have the same thoughts as the prince? When I served tea to the prince yesterday, the prince also regretted it. Mu Yangling couldn't help but pursed his lips and smiled, okay, stop joking, and ask someone to pack up the things, and move them there first tomorrow. The general's mansion was built on a Zhuangzi, which had left the inner city and entered the outer city. The layout of Zhezhou city is similar to that of Linan city. There are mountain villages outside the city, and the city is divided into the outer city and the inner city. The inner city is mostly inhabited by officials and gentry, but there are also fields distributed in it, but very few, mostly far away from the center. Border areas. The outer city is populated by scholars, farmers, businessmen, and commerce. The layout is a bit chaotic, and there are large tracts of farmland and small hills scattered in it. Now Zhezhou city has fallen, and 2 or 3 out of 10 houses in the city are uninhabited. This is half a year after the war. According to Qi Heiran, when he passed by here during the war, there were only 3 households in 10 families in Zhezhou city. The city was empty and there was no one on the street. Later, Qi Heiran went to Qianan first, originally intending to buy 2 houses in the inner city and make them the general's mansion, but at that time the officials and gentry in the city united, and they didn't know what they wanted to get from Qi Heiran. They asked people to buy a house, but they couldn't even find out a vacant house. Qi Heiran knew that they wanted to show him off, if he quit at this time, he would be restrained in everything he did in the future, he was not a person who could bear it, so when he got angry, he asked Fei Bai to go to the outer city to buy a large piece of land to build a village. There is a lot of barren land in Zhuangzi that can be used as homesteads. Therefore, with a wave of Qi Heiran's hand, the general's mansion and Fan Zijian's fan mansion were built on Zhuangzi. Now the officials and gentry in Zhezhou city panicked. Unexpectedly, Qi Heiran would rather live in the outer city than to soften his temper slightly. He was angry and regretted for a while, so the officials of Zhezhou city later encountered the matter of wrong Jun Wangfu, just give in as much as you can, and don't dare to head on. So many people flocked to Qi Heiran when he was looking for a house to settle his family members. They also asked Qi Heiran to choose their house when he was looking for a house. Apart from wanting to please Qi Heiran, he also wanted to restore his previous impression. The house was built in the outer city, so safety became the primary issue. Fortunately, all the guards who followed Mu Yangling came, so it is enough to select some people from the army at that time. The general's mansion has 5 entrances, and it is connected to Fan's mansion on the left and right, separated by only 1 wall. Considering that Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian are brothers, the designer specially built a door to let the 2 sides communicate. If the door is locked, this is 2 families. Just 1 family. Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian were very satisfied with this design, and Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia were also very satisfied with this design. In the future, even if they want to drop by, they don't need to turn outside to enter again, they can just pass through the garden. There is an avenue outside the mansion leading directly to the main street of the outer city, surrounded by cultivated land, within a radius of 3 miles, only the 2 of them are here, and only a few houses are located 3 miles away. They are tenants of the farm. When Qi Heiran bought the land, by the way, the tenants were also left behind. Mu Yangling packed things here very quickly. She knew she would not live here for a long time, so except for some necessary clothes and daily necessities, she didn't open other things, and still packed them in the warehouse. At this time, you can go there directly by loading the carriage. When she was about to tidy up here, Quillan, Xioxia's personal maid, ran over anxiously, "Princess, our wife is not feeling well, and we only packed half of the things." The Duke of the State said earlier that he would move in with the Wangfu. The Wangfu has already been tidied up, but their side is in a mess. If the Duke of the State finds out, he might blame his wife, so although I am very embarrassed, but Quillan still had the cheek to come over to invite Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling didn't think much about it, and handed over the rest of the period to Wang Ma, and took Li Chun to hold Xiao Xiang's little hand, and asked as he walked, "What's wrong with your wife? Have you invited a doctor?" Quillan looked sad, and said, "A prescription has been prescribed." The houses rented by the two families are also close to each other, and it is only a few steps away. Mu Yangling is not in the habit of making a carriage, so he walked directly out of the mansion to Fan's mansion. When Mu Yangling entered the mansion, Fan's mansion was in a mess. Girls and servants were running around in the mansion, making a lot of noise. Mu Yangling frowned slightly, and Quillan shouted sharply, "What's the fuss? I didn't see the princess coming over, is it? In the past, Madam was the housekeeper, and you are also so noisy. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 657. The yard was silent for a moment, and everyone knelt down when they saw Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling stared at them for a long time, until cold sweat appeared on their foreheads, and then asked, "Where is the nanny in charge?" Someone replied tremblingly, "Go back to the princess, Mother Xia is serving my wife personally." "Is there only one nanny in charge in the mansion? Who else is the nanny in charge?" Immediately, 3 women stepped forward on their knees and knelt down again. Mu Yangling said, "Take care of your own people, pack up the things you are in charge of, and stop packing up the rest of you, and do whatever you need to do on weekdays. Your wife is sick and needs to rest, let me hear you guys are so messed up, just kick them out." Everyone's heart trembled, and they all responded respectfully. Xiao Xia was lying on the bed with a pale face, and there was a strong smell of medicine in the room. Madame Xia was holding a medicine bowl to persuade her in a low voice. When she saw Mu Yangling coming in, she hurriedly stood up and saluted, and reported to Xiao Xia in a low voice, "Ma'am, the princess is here." Xiao Xia turned over and was about to get up. Mu Yangling took 2 steps to hold her down, and said, "Lie down, why are you being polite to me?" Mu Yangling turned his head to look at the medicine bowl that Nanny Xia put aside, and said, "This medicine is getting cold, drink it while it's hot." He brought it to her himself. Xiao Xia gave a wry smile, but didn't refuse any more, leaned back and drank it, pressed her lips with a handkerchief, and said with a wry smile, "This medicine isn't much use after taking it, it's just to comfort people's hearts." Hearing what she said, Mu Yangling was shocked. Could it be a terminal illness? What kind of disease? What did the doctor say? Xiao Xia's eyes were red, she lowered her head to sob in a low voice, but she didn't say a word. She was originally a gentle and weak person, the complaint just now was the limit. After getting along for so long, Mu Yangling also knew her character. Looking back at Nanny Xia knelt down and said, "Princess, please persuade our wife." Mu Yangling looked at Xiao Xia's family, then said to Nanny Xia with a calm face, "Let's talk." Mother Xia's eyes were slightly red, and she said, "The wife of Jingzhong sent a letter, saying that our wife has not been pregnant for so long after entering the house. The master and the wife decided to give the Duke a concubine, and now we are halfway there." Madame Xia said distressedly, "Our wife has been recuperating her body for the past 6 months, but this pregnancy is not something that can be conceived just by being pregnant." Grandma Xia was also anxious. When she was in the capital, her daughter was unable to conceive. It can be inferred that the Duke was busy and didn't have sex with her. The father-in-law would go into the wife's room every night, but he would call for water every now and then. It could be seen that their husband and wife had a harmonious relationship, but the wife never got pregnant. Not to mention the master and wife who are far away in the capital, even she and his wife are in a hurry. Mu Yangling waved people to go down, only she and Xiao Xia were left in the room. Mu Yangling took her hand and asked, "But what's wrong with your body? What did the doctor say?" Xiao Xia's face turned slightly red, but she still said truthfully, The doctor said that my chi and blood are not in balance, but it's not a big problem. I also know that everyone is looking forward to the eldest son of the second master, so I have been taking medicine to regulate my body for the past 6 months. Didn't I borrow the imperial doctor from you to see me a while ago? He said that my foundation is good, and the imbalance of chi and blood is caused by the recent impatience and irregular diet. There is nothing wrong with it. Xiao Xia frowned and sighed, however, but I have never been able to conceive. In the capital, I used to say that the second master was too busy with government affairs to stay home, but after coming to Qianan, the second master would go back to the mansion almost every night. Mu Yangling was distressed. Could it be Fan Zijian's problem? Mu Yangling didn't dare to ask, just said, "Are you too nervous? I heard that some people always want a child but can't get pregnant, but when they relax, they want to let it go, but they get pregnant. In the final analysis, it's the mood nervous." Xiao Xia's eyes lit up, and said, "The imperial physician also said so, but how can you not be nervous about this matter?" Mu Yangling patted her hand and said, "Don't worry, when we move to the new house, we will go out to climb mountains and go for outings together. When we are in a good mood, we will not be nervous. Pregnancy can't be rushed." Seeing that her brows were still gloomy, Mu Yangling said in a low voice, "Don't worry, my uncle and aunt sent concubines, but because they sent them, my cousin will definitely not touch her, and cousin, you made up your mind to have an eldest son, and you have only been in Qianan for more than 3 months now, not 3 years." Hearing what Mu Yangling said, Xiao Xia let out a breath slowly, took Mu Yangling's hand and sobbed, "Aling, thank you for letting me go." Mu Yangling patted her hand and said, "You should rest first, don't be busy these few days, I will help you clean up the house, and we will go out to play when we move there, and then see if the 2 brothers have time. If there is, our 2 families will travel together, maybe you will be pregnant." Xiao Xia's face turned slightly red. When Nanny Xia entered the room again, she was relieved to see that Xiao Xia's face was not as ugly as before. Knowing that Mu Yangling persuaded her, she hurriedly touched the brochure and reported to the front, "Ma'am, the people in the east and west wings, the things are almost packed, when will the things in the warehouse be packed?" Xiao Xia pointed at Mu Yangling and said with a smile, "Ask the princess just said that she would help me." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "You're not afraid that I'll empty out your warehouse?" Xiao Xia covered her mouth and smiled, "You can still see my things." Seeing her smiling like a flower, Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, arranged the affairs of Fan's residence, and returned home after the sun went down in the evening, and the little bear made a fuss about going to play in the yard, so Mu Yangling handed him over to Guyu, asked Mama Wang to call Imperial Physician Wang to inquire about Xiao Xia's health. Dr. Wang's answer was the same as Xiao Xia's, and she repeatedly assured that Xiao Xia was fine and had a good foundation, because she had taken the medicine for strengthening the foundation and strengthening the yuan for a long time before. Mu Yangling thought for a while and asked in a low voice, "Could it be the problem of Mr. Biao?" Imperial Physician Wang also had this suspicion, but he didn't dare to say it. He could only vaguely say, "You can only know after the pulse has passed. Then you go to rest first, and I'll call you if something happens." Mu Yangling felt that this kind of thing was possible for both men and women, so Fan Zijian had to see it to make sure it was all right. So after Qi Heiran came back at night, Mu Yangling put the food on the table and asked, "Do you want to invite my cousin?" Qi Heiran was running all over the house with his son on his back, and he took the time to reply, "Why are you looking for him? My cousin will take care of him." Mu Yangling waved the people in the room to go down, and said in a low voice what happened today, emphasizing that Xiaoxia's health is fine, and said, "Why don't you call him over and ask the imperial doctor to take a look at him?" Qi Heiran's face darkened, and he was silent for a while before saying, "Understood, you don't care about this matter." The little bear was happy. Seeing his father suddenly stopped, he patted his head and said, "Drive, drive." He clamped his neck tightly while shouting. He Chi Heiran put away the gloomy expression on his face, and ran around the room with yes, gots, and the little bear started giggling. Mu Yangling only felt itchy ears, and hurriedly waved, all right, the food is ready, hurry up and eat. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 658. After dinner, Chi Heiran asked Fei Bai to invite Fan Zijin over, and he wanted to have a long talk with him all night. Fan Zijin pursed his lips and brought a pot of wine over. Chi Heiran sent someone to tell Mu Yangling to go to bed first. He rested in the study tonight. Fan Zijin blinked, are you really going to have a long talk with me all night? This is rare. Ever since this kid got married, he was not very happy to play with him. Fan Zijin stared at Chi Heiran with piercing eyes, trying to force him to confess. Who knew that Chi Heiran was so capable this time, and he ordered Fei Bai to go down to prepare without changing his face. Food and drink. Fei Bai thought he didn't see the eyebrows and eyes of the two, so he went down quickly, but before he walked out of the yard, he heard Fan Zijin yell loudly. Fei Bai was startled, and when he turned around, he saw Fan Zijin chasing and beating Chi Heiran in the room. Chi Heiran, just hide, do not fight back. Fei Bai shuddered, and decided that he had fallen on the road, so he couldn't come back in time to serve him. Fan Zijin kicked Chi Heiran, and said with a ferocious expression, what do you mean? Suspect that master is not a man. Chi Heiran rubbed his kicked buttocks and said, I didn't say that, I just went to see the doctor, what's wrong with the ping and pulse? Fan Zijin stared at him with cold eyes. Chi Heiran scratched his head, and said in a low voice, only our brothers know about this matter, if Dr. Wang dares to speak out, I will kill him. The little bear is 2 years old, your son I haven't seen a picture yet, and if I don't give birth again, how will the brothers play when they have a big difference in age? Fan Zijin just glared at him, and sat on the imperial chair to think about something. For him, it was a great shame and humiliation to go to see the doctor because of such a thing, but what Heiran said was right, only the two of them knew about it. As long as he doesn't want to die, he must not dare to speak out. Fan Zijin raised his eyes to look at Chi Heiran, and asked, you won't turn around and tell Aling? Chi Heiran said seriously, this is a matter between us brothers, why tell her? Fan Zijin snorted coldly, waved his hand and said, call someone in. Chi Heiran heaved a sigh of relief, and hurriedly ran to call Imperial Physician Wang over. Physician Wang had been waiting in the West Wing, and also heard the loud drinking from the study. His heart was beating non-stop. Seeing Chi Heiran coming to call him, he hurriedly followed behind respectfully. Seeing that he was anxious, Chi Heiran was afraid that it would affect his pulse diagnosis, so he hurriedly comforted him in a low voice, do not be nervous, Imperial Dr. Wang, I believe in your medical skills. The reason why the Emperor chose you to follow us to the south was because of your superb medical skills. After I said that, you will follow this king, so that Brother Huang doesn't have to worry about this king all the time. Hinting to Imperial Physician Wang, you will be my man from now on, as long as you are mine, I will not kill people to silence you. Physician Wang breathed a sigh of relief. When he left the palace, the emperor did not ask him to follow the peace pulse of King Rongjun. This meant that the emperor was simply worried about the health of King Rongjun's family, rather than monitoring them. If the emperor didn't ask, he won't reveal Fan Zijin's secrets, so no matter whether Fan Zijin has any problems, he doesn't have to worry about silence. Imperial Physician Wang stabilized his mind, and entered with a smile on his face. Fan Zijin lifted his eyelids and glanced at the two of them, then extended his hand to Imperial Physician Wang. Seeing Fan Zijin's cooperation, Imperial Physician Wang hurriedly sat aside and took his pulse seriously, and then asked a few more private questions. After pondering for a long time, he said, "My lord, there is nothing wrong with your body and your air." Fan Zhaijin breathed a sigh of relief. Qi Heiran's heart tightened. There is no problem with the air, what about other aspects? Grandpa is overworked and his heart is exhausted. I'm afraid it will hinder his lifespan in the long run. Qi Heiran's complexion changed, and Fan Zhaijin couldn't help becoming serious. Anger was brewing in Qi Heiran's eyes, and he was so angry. Where did you take the monthly peace pulse? Dr. Wang was also very wronged. My lord, only the concubine, my wife, and the young master get the monthly peace pulse on time. When I want to greet the Lord and the Lord, you say you are in good health. You don't need to feel the pulse, the Duke also pushed along. It means, you don't want to take the ping and pulse yourself, so tired that Fan Zhaijin can follow suit, so why blame me instead? Qi Heiran calmed down the anger in his chest, and asked, then what do you say? The first one is that the Duke can't be so tired anymore, you have to combine work and rest, otherwise even taking medicine won't be of much use. The second one is that I will prescribe some medicines for you to restore your body first and then slowly recuperate. Physician Wang said a lot of precautions. Fan Zhaijin's face was a little dazed, but Qi Heiran listened seriously with a serious face. Qi Heiran couldn't help being rejoicing. Fortunately he had listened to Aling's words and told Zhaijin to see the imperial physician, otherwise he didn't know when he would find out. Thinking that his elder brother was also a little weak after being poisoned, his eyes turned red. Dr. Wang said a lot of words, and then left a prescription and a few prescriptions for medicinal food, and then stepped back respectfully. Qi Heiran said with a straight face, you leave the business in your hand to the supervisor, and just look at the accounts every month. As for the military affairs, I will ask someone to help you. Fan Zhaijin rubbed his forehead and said, the household department just cried for poverty, and Zhang Cheng wrote to me asking if I could withdraw 100,000 taels of silver this month. The seeds in the south of the Yangtze River have been settled, but the farmers in the west, north, and south are still looking forward to the seeds of the imperial court. Could it be that without you, they have nothing to do? Then what's the use of them? Qi Heiran became angry and shouted, I have the final say on this matter, and you are not allowed to transfer money to the household department. Fan Zhaijin looked at him with a sneer, then let the eldest cousin get angry and make him fall ill? The poison in his body has not been completely cleared. You don't want me to suffer, so why don't you bear him? Qi Heiran was furious. I told my eldest brother about this matter. If Zhang Cheng and the others can't come up with any regulations, he doesn't have to do the minister of the household department. Qi Heiran was so anxious that his eyes were red, and his eyes were full of tears. He roared in a low voice, brother's lifespan is hindered, and your lifespan is also hindered. Is it possible that each of the three of us can live to old age in good health? Fan Zhaijin's complexion changed, and he reprimanded, what nonsense are you talking about? Dr. Wang is just scaremongering. Qi Heiran looked at him stubbornly, and said, if you don't listen to me, I will tie you up myself, do you believe it? Fan Zhaijin looked at him helplessly. In the evening, the two brothers lay back to back on the bed. Qi Heiran said, governing the country and the world can't be done overnight, we are in such a hurry these days, we always want to take care of everything, but in fact, no matter whether it is governing the country or bringing peace to the world, it is not just the three of us who can do it. There are many capable people in the world. It depends on whether they can be used and whether they can be used well. If they can be used well, you are sleep until the sun reaches 3 poles, and the government affairs are still in order. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 659. Fan Zhaijin asked coolly, then do you have any talented people who can use it now? Qi Heiran choked, except for one master who was sent by his eldest brother as an aide, and his subordinates were all from the imperial court, so how could there be any capable people with lofty ideals? An Ankh of the Imperial Court only opened the rural examination this year, and he will pass the general examination next year. It will be the next year for his subordinates. Moreover, those who have passed the imperial examination may be able to study, but they may not be successful in economics and military affairs. Chi Heiran is distressed frown. Fan Zijin hummed twice, and seeing Chi Heiran's stinky face, he took a step back and said, "Okay, I'll just pay attention to rest in the future." But both of them knew that if they couldn't find someone to share the work, this sentence would only be empty talk. Chi Heiran was so anxious that he didn't sleep all night, and when he got up the next day, he sat on the chair with a bad temper. Fan Zijin didn't want to look at his face, so he walked back to his home without eating breakfast. Fei Bai washed him up against Chi Heiran's low pressure, and rushed into the backyard like flying, begging Aunt Guyu to help him, and the princess, I beg for mercy, hurry to the study to have a look. Wang Ye's face looks like he is about to kill someone. When Mu Yangling went to the study, Chi Heiran sat on the chair in a daze with a positive expression, as if he had been severely hit. Mu Yangling was shocked. Could it be that Zijin is really sick? Mu Yangling stepped forward to hold his hand worriedly, and asked, "What's wrong?" Chi Heiran's eyes were slightly red, and he said, "Physician Wang said that Zijin is overworked, and I'm afraid it will affect his lifespan." Mu Yangling didn't believe it. Physician Wang is just scaremongering. Even if you work a little harder, it won't affect your lifespan. Although Fan Zijin is busy, he can always guarantee 6 hours of sleep every day, right? Surrounded by servants, she doesn't have to worry about anything other than work. In her previous life, she also had friends who only slept for 4 or 5 hours a day in order to work hard for her career. She went to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning and woke up at 6 or 7. Life is struggling, but I have never heard of anyone whose lifespan is hindered. Although Fan Zijin was also busy, the ancients went to bed early and went to bed before 11 o'clock every day. Even if he got up at 4 or 5 in the morning to work, he went to bed from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning, which is the most suitable time for sleep and health. It's much better than those who don't go to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning, but sleep for 8 hours. It's not recent, it's the root cause of the illness left in the capital before Chi Heiran explained. In Qianan, the first 2 months were very busy, but the two brothers supported each other here, and it didn't consume too much body. After Mu Yangling came, he even tried to get home every night. If he wanted to go home, he couldn't let Zijin work alone in the barracks, so he dragged someone back. Even if Zijin worked late in the study, he wouldn't be exhausted. According to Dr. Wang's inquiry, the root of the problem lies in the previous 2 years. Before Fan Zijin was trapped in the capital, he was frightened, while looking for opportunities to help Chi Ziyuan operate. Sleeping or not sleeping became the norm. At that time, he was not yet full of weak crowns. For a man, he was still growing, but his body was overstretched. Later, when the world was pacified and Chi Ziyuan came to the throne, he was always busy and never fell ill. Wouldn't think of seeing a doctor. Fan Zijin has always felt that his body is very good. Although it is not as good as Chi Heiran, it is not too bad. However, Wang Tai's pulse diagnosis this time undoubtedly found out all the problems caused by his overdrawn body in the past 2 years. In short, Fan Zijin must rest, bringing up his body while he is still young, otherwise the hidden dangers left before will definitely explode when he reaches middle age. But what Zijin said was also right. He relaxed on his side, and the elder brother must share the burden. Zijin's health is not good, and the elder brother is just being strong on the surface. Equally bad. This is also the reason why Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin work so hard to share the burden for Chi Ziyuan, in order to lighten Chi Ziyuan's burden as much as possible. Chi Heiran's heart ached when he thought of the physical condition of his eldest brother and Fan Zijin. He squeezed Mu Yangling's hand and asked, "Aling, what do you think we should do?" In a word, distribute your burden to the people below. As long as you give a general policy, the supervision will not go wrong. You don't have to do everything yourself. Like me, just tell them an idea, and they will be able to cultivate upland rice. Number 2 and upland rice. Number 2, I just need to tell Xiaoting that our family's Lucian needs to build terraced fields, and he will do it himself. I just need to read at home and take care of my son, and go to the field from time to time to see the progress. Chi Heiran looked at her speechlessly. This is an important matter for the court, not a matter for the back house. How can it be so easy? Things are all connected. It's because you think too complicated about things yourself, and you can't rest assured. If you don't try to let go, how do you know that the people below are not doing well? You are rulers. What is a ruler? My understanding is to manage your employees well and let them do a good job for you. Then what if someone takes bribes and takes bribes? Don't the people under you take bribes after everything you have done? Mu Yangling asked back. I know that delegating power will increase the chances of corruption and bribery, but the benefits are worth the risk. We can build the supervisory agency conducts spot checks from time to time. As long as corruption and bribery are found, they will be severely punished. They will treat the councillors kindly, let them see their hard work, and the bright future they will bring after being clean, and let them know the huge price they need to pay for corruption and bribery. Naturally know how to choose. Seeing Chi Heiran pondering, Mu Yangling patted him on the shoulder and said, I think that the new dynasty has just been established, and there are very few people who are willing to commit crimes against the wind. Your charisma conquers them, and the time to really worry about corruption is when the world will be completely stable and prosperous 10 or 20 years later. Mu Yangling was not aimless. She had been watching the establishment of Deqi, so she could see it clearly. Deqi's salaries for officials are still in accordance with the old rules of Dezhou, and should not be too rich. Emperor Sejong established such a salary system back then, probably because he wanted to make money, and it worked well in the first 50 years. Now Qi Ziyuan follows the old practice and pays high salaries to officials. Moreover, he is upright and famously hates empty pay and corrupt people. He has copied several famous corrupt officials from the previous dynasty, and even pulled Qin Xiang into the office. He came out to set an example and repeatedly stated that he hated this kind of corrupt officials and treacherous officials who invaded the country's property and robbed the people's resources. The heart does not dare to embezzle. Even at the local level, Qi Ziyuan restrained himself a lot because Qi Ziyuan repeatedly beheaded several corrupt county magistrates. Acting like a leader, talking about not only bad habits, but also good habits, so under the circumstances of such an emperor, there are many fewer officials who dare to reach out for corruption. Mu Yangling feels that it is best to train subordinates in this environment, because they can rest assured. This is the advantage of the establishment of the new dynasty. Officials have not yet figured out the official rules of the Qing dynasty, and everyone will look forward to it. In order to be in the eyes of the emperor and stand out, they will work much more diligently than before. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 660. Then the next question is, where do we get talents? As Fan Zijin said, Ankh will only be opened this year, and new talents will not be injected until the year after next. Now the army is full of elders, who don't know a lot of Chinese characters, and the logistics are completely supported by Zijin. As for business matters, Zijin also said that he is not in charge, but he needs to recruit people, unless he digs other people's walls. Otherwise, how can there be someone who can count and keep accounts but can manage the shop waiting for us to recruit? Then put up a notice to recruit talented people, Mu Yangling said. Didn't those nobles recruit customers like this during the spring and autumn and warring states periods? There is no shortage of talented people in this world. We feel that talents are hard to find, so say maybe the talent is still lamenting that there is nowhere to succeed. Chi Heiran pondered. This is for business, but the military must be appointed by the imperial court. In fact, I don't understand why those positions are reserved for Enk. We can use the former dynasty to serve now, or be dismissed for loyalty, or dismissed for filial piety. Officials who have resigned from office, as well as those who have passed the provincial examination but have no way to become an official, can also be used. K-Ink can certainly make students feel grateful to the court and be loyal to Daki, but they must think that they can get ahead by relying on their own skills, but using those officials who have no chance to raise people can make them loyal to the court. I am grateful to the emperor, and I am more attentive, as long as their character is decent. What difference does it make if the talent is a former court official or a former court educator? Chi Heiran thinks more. The officials in the court are still a little anxious, they are just afraid that they will cleanse the former court officials after the Qi family has established the country, but once this policy comes out, it can calm the minds of the courtiers. Qi Ziyuan was also having a headache because of the lack of office in various places. As soon as Qi Heiran's notes came up, he became aroused. Officials who were deposed or resigned in the previous dynasty were not so useful, and he needed to throw a stone to ask for directions. Qi Ziyuan called Yan Du, Zhang Cheng, and other important ministers of the former court and the left and right servants and ministers of the official department into the palace, and issued the position he wanted to fill, and asked, which one of the former courts has retired or has other reasons? Are absentee officials suitable for these positions? The eyes of Zhang Cheng and the others brightened, and they felt that the emperor's mind was really broad. Not only did he not suspect them, these important former court officials, but he was even willing to use the former court officials who were in the wild. Thinking of this, everyone was grateful and tried hard to recall if they knew such a person. Talented officials. Everyone discussed for an afternoon. Qi Ziyuan asked people to write down the list they provided, and only Yan Du was left behind, and the others stepped down. The king of Rongjun asked me to recruit people who have no way to become an official, but I feel that if there are talents with special talents, it is not impossible to make an exception. For example, I heard that there is a scholar in Ezhu who is good at water control. There is no shortage of imperial examinations, and I have no shortage of Jinchi or Juran, but I am short of such talents. Yan Du's eyes lit up, and he cupped his hands and said, the emperor's exception in recruiting talents is really a blessing for Daki and the common people. Qi Ziyuan waved his hand and said, Yan Qing, don't be so full of good words. If you make an exception and rely on the recommendation of the officials below, I am afraid that you will repeat the mistakes of the procuratorate system and the 9-rank Zhongzheng system, and let the officials below control the official selection system. The system of selecting talents has become a means for them to fill their own pockets and seek their own desires. Yan Du thought for a moment, and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. Although my court has introduced a way to admit exceptions, it is the imperial examination that really works. The officials at the bottom have limited operations. We should formulate some policies so that their fortunes and misfortunes depend on each other. People do have real talents and learning, then give some rewards to the recommenders, or record excellent achievements in political performance, or reward some money. Make a record of your achievements. Qi Ziyuan nodded. Yan Qing will go down and write a letter, and submit it tomorrow. Let's discuss it with the ministers at the court meeting. Yan Du knew that Qi Ziyuan had already agreed with this method, so he hurriedly bowed down. Qi Ziyuan knocked on the table, sighed, took a look at Fan Zijian's pulse case, and then wrote to Qi Heiran, asking him to recruit talents nearby to take over Zijian's business. After Qi Ziyuan returned to the harem, he asked Li Jinghua to open a warehouse to pack some precious warming and tonic medicinal materials to Qianan. Li Jinghua asked hastily, Is something wrong with King Rong? Qi Ziyuan smiled and said, It's nothing, it's just that Qianan is poor, and I'm worried that they don't have good medicinal materials there, so you just send them. Li Jinghua paused, smiled, and nodded in response. At this time, Qianan was already full of excitement. Qi Heiran delivered a letter to Qi Ziyuan on the front foot, and people beat gongs and drums to find that talent on the back foot. The excitement was like setting up a big stage to sing in an opera, but no one came forward to apply for it. Fan Zijian saw it horribly, and Chi Heiran said, I think it's better to forget it, the barren land in southern Guizhou, where can you find someone who can do it, business talent. Chi Heiran didn't believe in evil, so he asked Fei Bai to yell, just as I said, as long as you have real talents and learning, no matter who he is, you will definitely use him. As long as you have done it for 5 years, you can leave. When the time comes, I will give you a gift. He has a bright future. Fan Zijian frowned, and said, I don't need big-hearted people. If you work under me, you must sign a contract of sale. Fan Zijian was very suspicious. He was different from Chi Heiran. Those who worked under him were all his servants. Those stewards he allocated to Mu Yangling were still in his hands. How distrustful! Mu Yangling was coaxing the little bear to eat fruit, and said, I don't know how many people you have sent when you go out. Not everyone can accept being a slave. I think it's better to sign a labor agreement, just like what Heiran said, sign a 5-year contract, not to sell the secrets of our shop within 3 years after leaving, and set the conditions a little harsher, as long as the other party has no bad intentions, they will generally accept it. You don't need to be a servant, and you have a future, so people come. Fan Zijian snorted coldly, and said proudly, it's their honor to be the master's slave, and they are allowed to pick and choose. Chi Heiran nodded repeatedly, and said to Mu Yangling, if you say that, no one will apply for it. If Zijian wants to recruit slaves to manage the shop, many people will flock to him. Mu Yangling didn't believe it. The talents I recruited are also used to manage the shop, and the wages I pay are not bad, and I don't need to be slaves. The conditions are so good. Comparing the two, everyone knows how to choose. Chi Heiran chuckled, that's because you don't understand people's hearts, so come and take a gamble if you don't believe me. Fan Zijian became a little interested, that's not bad, why don't we take a bet, set up 2 arenas, and see if people go to your side to apply, or to my side. Just bet, who's afraid of whom? Mu Yangling turned around and called Xiaoting over, explained it carefully, and then looked at Fan Zijian proudly. Fan Zijian casually waved his hand to let Yanmo go, and said, just say that the master's shop is short of people, and they need to recruit slaves. Talented people can apply, but they have to sign a death contract. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 661. Xiaoting and Yanmo set up 2 stands in the city of Guizhou, one on the left and one on the right, and Yanmo confidently motioned for Xiaoting to come first. Xiaoting came to the stage with a gong in his hand, and the sound of dang attracted everyone's attention. He cleared his voice and said, my folks have also seen the words recruiting talents and talents written on the banner. Next is the people of Rongjun Palace, hereby convey the meaning of our princess. Anyone who has a skill, or is good at accounting, or good at managing a shop, or is eloquent, can come to apply. The salary is not low, and you are not forced to sign a contract of sale, you only need to sign a 5-year contract, and promise not to disclose the secrets of the shop within 3 years of leaving the house, as long as you need it, wages and rewards are not a problem. The people at the bottom whispered to each other, but no one dared to step forward. Xiaoting frowned slightly, and was about to seduce again, but Yanmo over there had already knocked on the gongs and drums, raised his head slightly, and said arrogantly, I am from the government of Anquagong manager, because our Anquagong shop is expanding and urgently needs manpower, so we are also recruiting talents here, but our Anquagong's mansion is not so close, no matter whether the net worth is innocent or not, if you want to enter the mansion, you have to forget the past and sign the Death contract. Those who think they have 2 points of ability will come forward to sign up, they will have their own management assessment, and those who pass will sign the contract of sale on the spot, but those who have not will receive the reward and leave. As soon as this remark came out, the people below became excited immediately, and a young man stepped forward and asked, "Brother, are you serious? After that, you can make a contract, and become a servant of Duke Cheng." Yan Mo said arrogantly, "Of course, our Duke said one thing is the same, but let me tell you first, the slaves that our Duke puts in the shop are all slaves who have signed death contracts. It is not impossible to sign living contracts. Food and clothing, it's okay to be associative, but don't even think about getting ahead." The young man lowered his head in thought, finally gritted his teeth and said, "I am willing to sign a death contract." Yan Mo glanced sideways at Xiaoting, and said with a smile, "Then bring your ID card and go to the back to sign up." "Hey," Xiaoting couldn't stop him. Seeing many people flocking to Yan Mo, and they all signed up, he jumped up, "We are also recruiting talents here, and our princess doesn't ask you to sell yourself." But no one paid any attention to Xiaoting, and those who thought they were capable all ran to Yan Mo. Yan Mo smiled complacently, came over and patted him on the shoulder and said, "Silly boy, why don't you understand, the problem is that we want them to sell their bodies, but you don't ask for it." Seeing that he still didn't understand, Yan Mo hummed and said, "I really don't know why your master chose you as an apprentice, and I will learn from your master again when you go back. You must know that the slaves of our palace and the Duke's mansion are not who want to, it can be done." On the tea house not far away, Mu Yangling opened his mouth wide, "Why are you rushing to be a slave?" Fan Zijin leaned on the recliner and didn't even bother to answer. Seeing her shocked like this, Chi Heiran held his wife's hand while fearing to hit her and said, "That's because they have blind eyes." Mu Yangling glanced at him and said, "Tell the truth." Chi Heiran immediately changed his words, and said arrogantly, "It also depends on whose slaves they are, so I won't talk about it. Zijin is also one of the only 3 princes in Daki, and he is favored by the elder brother. I don't know how many people cry you are yelling to be his slave. You only signed a contract for 5 years, and there are still a lot of demands behind. Life and death are in his hands, but as long as you don't betray Zijin and don't make big mistakes, you will have a future and a life, which is better than going there to fight for an unknown future." Mu Yangling couldn't help distinguishing, "As long as they are talented, I will use them as much as they come here, and they are free, and they can leave after 5 years. Fan Zijin frowned, opened his eyes and asked, "You don't want them to be equal to those servants in your shop, do you? As long as they have the ability." Now even Chi Heiran showed a look of disapproval on his face. "Aling, wouldn't this chill the hearts of the servants? They are ours, and those people are just outsiders, how can we not distinguish between relatives and estrangements?" Fan Zijin lay back again, and said slowly, "I know, Aling knows one thing, but the problem of not knowing the other thing has happened again." Chi Heiran lowered his head and laughed ferociously, his shoulders shook. Seeing Mu Yangling looking at him with his mouth pouted, he hurriedly said righteously, "Although Zijin is right, Aling, let's not listen to him." Fan Zijin almost fell off the recliner, turned his head and saw Mu Yangling kick Chi Heiran furiously. He clapped his hands and said, "Good kick, you deserve it for telling you to forget your friends." But Mu Yangling has already understood that although she is offered generously, she can't bear it. This is a feudal society where confidants are slaves. No one will believe that she will give benefits to outsiders instead of living by her and serving her wholeheartedly. Slave. If she really did this, it would chill the hearts of the slaves below, wouldn't it encourage the slaves to rebel? Since you can get the treatment that a trusted servant can get without being a slave, who would want to be a slave? Mu Yangling sighed, so although Fan Zijin's conditions were harsh, many people flocked to him. As Chi Heiran said, it was impossible for many people to be Fan Zijin's slaves. Compete with each other. Mu Yangling looked down at the empty table on his side, and was about to wave someone to call Xiaoting up, when he saw a thin young man hesitantly approaching. Mu Yangling shouted happily, "Someone is going to sign up." Qi Heiran couldn't help hitting her and said, "Just one, look at Zijin's." Mu Yangling curled his lips and said, "I'm not going to compete with him now, as long as I don't return empty-handed today, I'll be satisfied." Qi Heiran was about to speak when Mu Yangling turned around and ordered Fei Bai, "Go down and have a look yourself, accept it if it's available, and reject it if it's not. You can't let that idiot Xiaoting accept you in a daze." Down. Fei Bai went down in response. Fan Zijin was a little surprised, and said, "I didn't expect you to be open-minded. I thought you would accept the other party for the sake of face, no matter what kind of person he is." Qi Heiran immediately said, "Is Aling such a person? Since it is recruiting talents, it is natural that the talent and character shall prevail." Fan Zijin curled his lips, "Okay, I know you two are deeply in love with each other, so you don't need to show your eyes in front of me. Okay, I've lost this matter." Mu Yangling poured himself a cup of tea, glanced at Yanmo who was surrounded in the middle below, and asked, "With so many people, it will take a while to tell who can use it, who can't use it." Fan Zijin waved his hand and said, "Didn't you tell me to rest more? I have already called the stewards. Those people have to pass the steward's eyes first, and then I will read it again and sign the contract of sale. I didn't use it right away. Yes, these people still need to investigate." Fan Zijin and Qi Heiran looked at each other, and smiled at Mu Yangling, "You don't need to worry about this matter. When these people can use it, I can really sleep until the sun rises every day, and live as I want." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 662. Mu Yangling was shocked, and said, "Talents can be cultivated slowly, but the body can't be delayed any longer. Don't you have 2 days of rest every 10 days? The day after tomorrow is the day for you to rest. Let's go to Xiaolianzi mountain after some fun, it's time to go outing and fly a kite." Fan Zijin curled his lips and said, "Not interested." Qi Heiran waved his hand, "We're going to escort Aling and his cousin, that's the deal." Fan Zijin raised his eyelids and glanced at them, his brows were tightly frowned, a little displeased. What a waste of time to play for 2 days. Qi Heiran acted resolutely. After the Dr. Wang's diagnosis, although Fan Zijin paid attention to it, he was still busy and couldn't spare time to take a good rest. Aling's suggestion was just right. Seeing that the young couple were looking at him eagerly, Fan Zijin could only nod in response. In the afternoon, Yanmo and Xiaoting came to report. When Yanmo saw Xiaoting, he smiled and motioned for him to go first. Xiaoting insisted on pursing his lips and said, "You should invite me first, and I will report to the princess later." Yan Mo just smiled, and said to the 3 masters, "Everyone has registered, a total of 58 people have passed the initial test of the 3 stewards, and the younger ones have already asked people to check their past affairs to see if they are innocent. When the list is confirmed, the younger one will come back to the words of the Duke." Fan Zijin nodded slightly, looked at Xiaoting. Xiaoting pursed his lips and said, "Go back to the Lord, the Wangfei, the Duke of the country, only one of us came to sign up, and the contract has been signed." Fan Zijin asked curiously, "Who is that person, and why did he want to sign this contract?" "That man is still a boy, and he is good at calculating accounts. His family is poor, and he has no way to survive. He still wants to be selected as a scholar, so he doesn't want to sell himself as a slave. I heard from the younger one that he only signs an employment contract and does not sell himself. So I dared to give it a try." The master seriously tested him and said that his ability is not bad, although his character is not very good, but he can barely use it. "How can you say that his character is not very good?" Mu Yangling asked curiously. Fan Zijin said, "Isn't it clear? There is nothing wrong with the family having no money, but thinking about the imperial examination. If you can accumulate money by yourself or find someone to support you, that's all. I just want to take your shortcut. People like us, he always only buys people and doesn't care about people, he just works as a clerk and accountant for others, but he wants to soar to the sky, isn't he so ambitious, deep-minded, and bad-mannered? Is this just your speculation? Fanzijan snorted coldly, and said angrily, you think I have deep thoughts, so you treat people with the heart of a villain, then you can ask Chi-Heiran, a gentleman. Mu Yangling turned back to look at him. Chi-Heiran touched his nose and said, Zijan is right, Aling, you are just too kind. You might as well just say I'm stupid. Fanzijan, who was about to speak, clapped his hands directly, good answer, turning to look at Chi-Heiran, look, she doesn't appreciate it, she's not really stupid, nor is she a crystal heart, why bother to take care of her like this? Chi-Heiran was so annoyed by the two of them running, he sat down next to Mu Yangling and hugged her shoulders fiercely, and said to Fanzijan, I'm just willing to pamper her, can you control me? Mu Yangling's musket was aimed at Fanzijan immediately, that's right, our husband and wife love each other, can you control it? Fanzijan made the two of them choke so hard that they couldn't speak, he covered his chest and shouted, my heart hurts. Then don't go to the barracks tomorrow, take a good rest at home. Fanzijan immediately put down his hand, snorted, and enjoyed the fruit on the table. Seeing this, Mu Yangling sighed, she is really a good employee of the century. In her previous life, all she saw were people who tried their best not to go to work or skip work. Fanzijan asked someone to arrange for the recruits, and said to Mu Yangling, do you want me to train the boy you recruited? You can't just put them in the shop, can you? Mu Yangling agreed without even thinking about it, and said, okay, I'll let Xiaoting lead him over. Anyway, half of the stewards in her shop came from Fanzijan, and she was not very good at cultivating stewards in this area. Fanzijan just smiled and asked Yanmo to lead him. Chi-Heiran helped Mu Yangling into the carriage, and rode back side by side with Fanzijan. When he reached the gate of the mansion, he patted his shoulder and said, leave me to investigate people. Help me keep an eye on that Lan Ling. Lan Ling is the Tongsheng who defected here. Fanzijan glanced at the carriage that had already entered the mansion, nodded and said, I know, don't worry, there are so many people in my place, you have to help me make a clear survey, don't put the details in, the Ministry of Households is still counting on my money for emergency woolen cloth. The matter of recruiting talents today is also sudden, and those people may not be able to catch up. That's not necessarily the case, Fanzijan sneered, there are quite a few people watching outside our residence. We can improvise, but who knows they can't. Chi-Heiran promised to investigate clearly, and Fanzijan sighed, I hope this recruiting will indeed lighten my burden, rather than increase my workload. Chi-Heiran looked at his body with worry in his eyes. Fanzijan reached out and patted his shoulder and said, don't worry, I'm still young, I'll take it easy in a few years. Chi-Heiran lowered his eyes and remained silent. Fanzijan waved his hand and rode back home on his own. Chi-Heiran didn't say a word in front of Mu Yangling, but only talked about the outing the day after tomorrow, and asked her to arrange it, aiming to make Zijan happy physically and mentally, relax her mind, and take good care of her body. Mu Yangling patted his chest and promised to complete the task. Fanzijan is also her friend, and she has been thinking about how to help him recuperate his body ever since she knew that his health was so bad that it would hinder his life expectancy. First of all, every day at noon, his favorite dishes became the medicinal diet prescribed by Dr. Wang. Although the cook had worked hard, the smell of medicine in the medicinal diet could not be completely removed. For the sake of his appetite, the caring Mu Yangling formulated a policy of 2 days of medicinal food and 1 day of his favorite dishes. Yesterday, Dr. Wang gave him a ping and pulse, but he didn't see any effect. Second, Mu Yangling asked Chi Heiran to take the little bear next door to play with Fan Zijian when he came back. This would squeeze his workspace and time after he returned home. After the little bear fell asleep, Fan Zijian was also gone. Working mood. At present, the effect of this is still very good, because according to the conclusion obtained by the Dr. Wang after taking the pulse, the depression in the Duke's heart seems to have dissipated quite a bit. Chi Heiran made an accurate guess about this. He felt that this was the credit of the bear kid. Anyone whose study was tossed about by the bear boy would always be annoyed. When he was happy, the depression in his heart would naturally dissipate a little. No way, who made his son so smart and cute, although he was a bit annoying when he got into a fight, but most of the time he was still very likable. At least Fan Zijian smiled more obviously during the few days with the little bear. His face I also had a lot of fun. The most important thing is that because Xiao Xiang squeezed his working hours, he had to give more work to his subordinates to squeeze his subordinates. Therefore, although he was still as busy, his working hours were reduced a lot.